Hello and welcome to LanguageCraft for a brand new episode of Let's Timelapse. Now here we are with this beautiful sunrise over our village, flying next to the windmill, flying next to the oven, and above the fields. Now in the previous 8 episodes, the village has really grown. From a small group of houses, it has turned into an actual village with quite a few buildings. And as we fly above the river, we come to where the future main square will be, which will actually be done very soon. But for the moment, we're next to the market, we can see the church, but the villagers have other big works to do. So we're going to put the church aside for the moment and go on to other fields such as defense. And today, another build team member of LanguageCraft is with me. After Théophile last time, Micromega is helping me out today. He was one of the first players to join the team, and he's today one of the chief architects and leads many projects such as Hydrus, which was a time-lapse, 2 time-lapses actually, and Flag Wars. Now the first thing that you'll notice on this tower that we're starting is that we're starting off with sandstone. Now, it was a risky gamble because it's a block that hasn't been used anywhere else in the village. Now, Micromega didn't agree. He thought it just didn't have its place there. I thought it was justified because the idea is that the tower's older. So even though we're only building this in episode 9 because that's the order and the organization of the series, imagine that this tower was actually built a long time ago. It was sort of a guard tower in the middle of nowhere. So why not a different type of block? In any case, we're putting a lot of other blocks in front of it, so you can't actually notice it that much. It doesn't stick out. And at the very bottom of the tower to the right, you can maybe notice that there was a little gap that was left, 2 blocks high, that is in fact chiseled stone brick. And it's there to simulate an entrance that would have been filled up because the entrance changed. You'll see that we will build it afterwards, but not on the very first floor. It will be moved higher up. Now this just keeps showing how important roleplay and a story are to a build. Even though this is just a tiny little aspect, we thought about it and I'm sharing it with you. How did 2 people manage to share the same vision and build the same things at the same time? Well, contrary to what one might think, we're not at all each in one corner, working on our own things. We're both discussing things, going to change what the other has done, sometimes building on the same corner at the very same time. Otherwise, to be honest, it just wouldn't be interesting. We would just build things separately. What's the point of building together, being in a team? The tower as it is was too short. It was sort of plump. We realized this after the end of the shot and added an extra story to make it almost twice as tall. Now the huge building that will come against it is the fort. It's a sort of dungeon to defend the village from the southeast with extremely thick walls. They're 3 blocks thick with huge posts in the corners. This will allow the village to have a center of defense until the castle is built, which should actually still be quite a while away. And during episode 2, when I talked about the organization and layout of the village, I talked about a sheriff and barracks. This fort will serve as barracks, and it makes for a very, very strong defensive position. So this shot is very close. I'm sorry if sometimes we fly too close to the camera, but what I really wanted to do was show you how patterns are created. Because on the church with Théophile, we created the patterns before recording, and we were only copying them during the shot. Here, it was not the case at all. We knew what dimensions we wanted. We had a couple of markings here and there, which we, to be honest, didn't even follow. We had columns of cobblestones, for example, to keep our bearings, but we hadn't created a single pattern. We just said, okay, let's start shooting. We have this wall to build, it'll be this high, let's go for it. So this is why we are constantly going over the same areas again, breaking it down, building it up again. This is how a good building comes to be, by always trying to do better and not being happy with your first draft. So obviously that first draft is a necessary step, a very important one, but definitely only the first one. This facade took a few hours with 2 of us working on it. We're constantly changing what the other did. It's actually fairly strange because Micromega and I have very different ways of building, very different views on building. But he's an architecture student and has an eye for shapes, has all the knowledge that goes with studying buildings, and I am much more attached to details. That way the two of us actually work very well together. All the shapes need to be worked. It's very important to step back and go back in to change things here and there, always striving to do better. So that going back is very important to get an idea of what it looks like. When you've got your nose inside of what you're building, it's hard to do that. Concerning depth, the size of the building actually changes. At the bottom the wall is 3 deep, at the top it is only 1 deep. Everything comes closer towards the top, but you can't really see it. You can just about feel it. It's not a pyramid either, but this shape adds to the building. The tower that sticks out is actually the staircase. We needed someplace straight to do that, because as I said, the other walls weren't completely straight, they slanted. Micromega is also really good at finding reference images, so he found various images that showed towers on the side of forts that just stop a little higher than the actual fort. In between, we built the other 3 sides without you. I mean, it wasn't very interesting to see the same thing over and over again, so we wanted to show you the special parts. And as you can see at the bottom, a small covered bridge was built to link to the tower, which is really the tip of the village, the spear to defend it. We have a crane that brings up supplies and are going through the inside, adding floors with huge beams to support everything. And as you'll see, the last ceiling was brought down by 1 block so that we could have wood on the inside and stone on the outside. Obviously having wood on the outside wouldn't make sense. On the roof it was brought way too quickly. So there we go, the fort is finished and it's really high. You'll be able to see that in a couple shots. But it is actually so wide that you can't really tell how high it is, it just looks bulky, which for a fort I find is good. Now the building we're now starting is the sheriff's office. So there are different types of sheriffs. Some serve directly the king, and some are appointed by lords. The one that I'm interested in, since it's so close to the market and this will be a trading town, will be a merchant sheriff. So not really, it sort of responds to the king, but not exactly, and definitely not to the lord. He takes care of everything relating to commerce. For example, the sort of basement that you can see under the building is the warehouse where the sheriff will store any goods that he has to seize. Because of course some merchants will most likely try to abuse the rules. So the sheriff has several roles. He has to regulate trade, solve petty disputes and seasonal fairs. He has a lot of power, but he remains under the lord in terms of hierarchy, even though he doesn't answer to him as a sheriff in charge of commerce. Back to the actual build. To the right you have what will become the stables, because after all, the building is a fort and the soldiers will need horses. As for the house itself, in some ways it's actually more medieval than any of the other houses of the village. One of Micromega's strengths, and one of my weaknesses, is what enables us to make such a good team. He's not afraid of not having any real logic when building, not being symmetrical. So, I mean, that's obviously something that I have a lot of trouble with. But I can bring all I know about the let's timelapse style, do a lot of the patterns, put a lot of detail, and he can break the symmetry and change things, bring a new look on things. So we kept arguing because he would often make even modules instead of odd ones, for example, in number of blocks. And it was quite a hard build because we were constantly changing over what the other had done, going over what he had done, and so you'll notice that some bits are done 3 times during the build. But that may be what makes the strength of this building. We took my strong suits, his strong suits, and put them together. So I'm not sure if something like this building could really have existed at the time. It's a sort of a hybrid, having both the sheriff's office and the fort in one building. But we're pleased with the end result. The building with the wooden roof then is the sheriff's office, and that's also where he lives. Underneath is his warehouse, and next to it is the actual fort, which doesn't belong to the sheriff at all. It is the barracks, it's the defensive position, And that's also why the whole first story of the whole building, including the sheriff's office, is heavily reinforced. And you'll notice that this wall that we're seeing is turned towards the future harbor, not towards the outside of the village, so that if someone comes by boat, they can easily shoot at them. But the fort is also at the southeast edge of the village, so the fort guards the entrance of the village. So there are two entrances, this one guarded by the fort, and the other one that will be guarded by the castle. So coming in from this high angle, we can really see the whole village. From the fields to the left, to the heart going towards the right. And we can locate the fort at the other end of town, between the edge of the village and the harbor. And right here in front, I'm in the grass, I need to find out what I want to build. I want to build something that's low so that the archers can shoot over them if need be. Coming in from the market, we really get an idea of how massive this structure is. Originally, I wanted to build houses in front of it, right here, but honestly, I think it would destroy the effect. More shops and stalls to extend the market could be better. This is what one will see when walking in the village for the first time. Very massive, very impressive. I certainly wouldn't want to attack such a structure. As well as the first chimney since the ovens. There will be many more. They are obviously an important part and have been forgotten until now. And here you can see the small covered bridge leading to the tower, as well as the hoist that really helps with the immersion and with breaking the symmetry. The actual modules are not the same size. On the left 3 wide, on the right is 4 wide. Very hard for me to take, but it works. We still have sponge blocks in the stables because we are still in 1.5 for this season, but they represent hay and will be changed over before the map is available for download. Now the small entrance that you can see at the very bottom is the entrance to the fort, because at that time entrances were never at ground level because of battering rams. As usual, we're finishing off the episode with a view of the village from the sky. A big thank you to microméga for his help. The fort was not supposed to be this big, but we went crazy with it, had a good time, and I think it really works that way. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time for episode 10 of Let's Time.